Hey everyone, it's Candice Dickens. Welcome. I'm running a little bit late today, so I apologize. Clients, love them, but I'm trying to give them some love and some support, so I spilled over a little bit. But welcome, welcome, welcome. Those who don't know me, I'm Candice Richardson Dickens. I am the host of YouTube channel Dope Black Therapist. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're on Instagram, please like and share. If you're on LinkedIn, please like and share, share, share. I'm also the owner of CRA Counseling Consulting Agency. You're not going to give myself some props. And website is CandiceRDickens.com and currently accepting new clients. Whew. I want to talk about a topic. This is Love Month. This is Valentine's Month, right? And I had an opportunity of looking at a video with two young people, Blueface and I think Shanam, I forgot her name. And I was looking at their relationship and I watched an episode in which this young man had punched out this young woman. And then I watched an episode where she had done some things with him and beat up his mom and his sister. And I noticed that they were operating out of a place of so much trauma, right? Of so much pain that the person who was abusing each of them was them, right? And there's trauma bonders when you're in a relationship with someone who is abusive to you and you might be abusive to them, but you're afraid of leaving them because of the fact that there's this fear of abandoning them, that the person who's traumatizing you is the person that you're connected to. They used to call this Stockholm syndrome, where people found that they were abducted, and like Patty Hearst, who was abducted and then put into a closet by her abductors, and then was gradually given information about how biased the world was, how unfair it was, and how this was a liberation movement. And then after a while, Patty Hearst being in that closet started believing what was being said to her and had empathy and compassion for the people who were abducting her and didn't want to hurt them because she realized that people are unfair they're biased, and that this was a revolutionary movement that was just trying to balance things out in the world and society. So her abductors became the people she sympathized, and eventually she joined them and did bank robberies, similar to the movie Q with um Q with, oh my God, what's that famous actor? I don't know why I'm brain farting today. But Q was about Denzel Washington. Thank you, was the main actor. And in that movie, his son needed a transplant. And he decided to go to a bank and rob the bank in order to, one, make a political statement about how unfair that transplant list is, that it's not based upon sometimes who's eligible in terms of medically eligible based on level of crisis. Sometimes it's based on financial things. It's a money business. So he decided to rob this bank and hold people hostage. And while he was there, the hostages got to hear his story about how much he loved his son and how she didn't want to hurt them. He wanted to really advocate for them, but he wanted to help his son. He wanted to bring attention to the fact that his son was a good kid and that he was a hardworking man. He had done everything right, but what he didn't have was money. He couldn't put his son on that list, at the top of the list. And it was his way of getting the money to pay for the procedure for the heart plant transplant, but it was also a way of bringing attention to injustice. So by the end of the movie, the people who were captives were also rooting for him. They were helping him. They were protecting him, right? So that happens also sometimes we get into dysfunctional relationships, right? If I look at Tina Turner and Ike Turner, right? The man who was beating her was the man that she had sympathy for because she felt that the world had turned their back against him and she had made a promise to not do what his parents had done to him, to not do what other people have done to him, which is use his talent and then become famous and leave him. So she stayed with him. So it's a trauma bond. Some people consider trauma bonds as we both had trauma and our trauma experiences bond us. So we become like Bonnie and Clyde, right? Where the world has done us dirty and we stick together, and our power, life trauma, is a thing that gels us together. So when I was watching this show on Zeus about this relationship with Blueface and his girlfriend, I was like, wow, look at this young woman who has such extensive trauma history of abandonment and abuse, who had a father who barely was there and a mother who was addicted to drugs. And then he had this young man who had a history of enmeshment with mom, where mom beat up all his girlfriends, was very domineering. who wasn't quite there for him and didn't have a great relationship with father. Trauma happened in both these people's lives. So they come together, and traumatized people have way of being combustible. They have an explosion because they've learned how to be in excitement, fight, flight mode, right? Where they're used to the experience of things happening to them, and then that used to experience of being taken care of. And taken care of means I'm going to be a ride and die. And that used to someone supporting me and loving me in a healthy way. I'm used to being loved and supported in a way that hurts me or that's excitable. And what's interesting is that these two people were fighting for safety, and then at one point started fighting each other, so that there could never be a period of peace. That peace looks like the conflict that they came from, where there was always this movement of disorganization and dysregulation, where there was never a period where they were happy. There was always something that was there, right? So people say that's a trauma bond because they were bonded by they both went through stuff. And people who go through stuff have a way of understanding what you're going through. But the worst thing that happens is that when those people who go through stuff, who have empathy and insight into what you're going through, when they do the same thing that the world did to you, the same thing that people did to you who broke you. So when I'm looking at situations, looking at this blue face and his girlfriend, when I'm looking at a Whitney Houston, Bobby Brown, both have traumas. Bobby Brown has significant traumas. Whitney Houston had the trauma of neglect, raised primarily by an alcoholic father because the mother was on the road so much. So there were some huge gaps in her feeling safe. And when she did feel safe, she felt safe with Robin, her best friend, who was also, a romantic partner for a brief period of time. But then what happens is, right? That healthy relationship that she was in was not considered a good relationship because it was a same sex relationship, but it wasn't a relationship that caused her to go on emotional upheavals. What happened is she picked a man who had the same level of neglect and abuse, and they were bonded, right? That he had abuse, neglect in childhood, and she had abuse and neglect in childhood. And two abused people get bonded by that same experience, and they end up hurting each other in ways that's familiar. The betrayal, the violence, the arguments, right? But there's also that bond that keeps them because it's I don't want to hurt him or I don't want to hurt her because I know what they've been through and I want to support them. But what happens is that they end up recreating what they know, which is pain and suffering, and they keep recreating what they know, which is victimization and being victimized and being violated and not being supported. And it feels like love, but what it feels like is what's familiar, and that's a trauma bond. But there's also this other thing that I want to introduce for those who are not therapists. And there's something called fawning, right? And it happens, or people pleasing. It happens in relationships. So people pleasing is one of or fawning, right? Fawning comes from if you see a fawn like a baby deer, it's real cute, but you look at them with the big eyes like Bambi, and you're like, wow, it's such a cute thing. I don't want to hurt it. I don't want to shoot it with a rifle or a gun. I want to love on this cute little thing with eyes. When you see a big deer, it's like, oh my God, he's gonna kill me. I'm gonna shoot him. But you see a fawn, and there's this party that softens. Fawning is a way that people relate to other people, so that they won't be hurt. Right? Instead of having the big eyes as the deer, they have these big hearts. It's a way of using your big heart to prevent you from getting hurt. So I prevent myself from getting hurt by people please. I take care. I look innocent. I'm extra supportive. I don't matter. You matter. Because there are other defense mechanisms. I can fight you because I think you're trying to hurt me. And we only fight things that we think we can beat, we can kill, we can push off, right? And if you're too big for me to beat, too big for me to to push away, then I'm gonna run and hide. I'm gonna flight. I'm gonna run for you. And if I'm not fast enough to run for you, I'm not big enough to beat you, then I'm gonna freeze, I'm gonna shut down, I'm gonna surrender. But there's another component of survival, which is that fawning. If I can't fight you, freezing doesn't make you stop, right? Because I can play dead and you still kicking me, right? Or I can play dead, you kick me and go, oh, I'm sorry, I hurt your foot. Oh, no, no, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. I should have had the dinner ready. I shouldn't have done that. I should have given you money when you asked for money. I shouldn't have done that. I should have given you sex on demand. I shouldn't have done that. I'm such an idiot. I don't know how I could have forgotten that I'm the reason that you're not well. I'm the reason that you can't succeed. I'm so sorry. My bad. It's me. And that is fawning. When you go out of your way to make their problem your mission to solve. When you go out of your way, right? It's the ultimate experience of being selfless. When you can't show up because you are an inconvenience to whoever is showing up. I can't have an opinion because if I have an opinion, it's going to make them upset. So I don't have an opinion. I'm people pleasing. I'm being who they need me to be because I'm afraid of abandonment. I'm afraid of being hurt because somewhere in my lifetime, I have learned, or in this relationship, I have learned that this is my survival mechanism that works, which is why people pleasers are also sometimes enablers. They're codependent because they've learned the only way to stay in a relationship is by pleasing the person who they're with, by giving in, by letting things happen, right? By being selfless, by making the hugest sacrifices ever, by giving up their voice, giving up their opinion, and giving up the opinion, the ability to say, no, this is not right, right? So this is huge. So we look at these two ways. There's a trauma bond. I go through some traumatic, you go through some traumatic, and that trauma connects us. And there may be nothing else that connects us. We may not have anything else in common, but the fact we've been through something and I got your back and you got my back because you know what it's like to not have back. But then what happens is in that trauma, there wasn't intimacy. So you may not have learned how to be intimate, how to be connected. You may not have learned how to have healthy relationships. You know how to do storm and normal, where we're storming all day, and that becomes our norm. But for those of you who've been wounded in these trauma bonding relationships, because the more you give, the less you get back in terms of being honored, being loved, being cared for. The more you give at work, the less you get in terms of promotion, right? Because sometimes we have a supervisor or an employer who looks like us, whether they're gender or race, or we identify with them because they are the people who we respect and they mistreat us. And we do that trauma bond where I don't want to report them because we're the same ethnic group, or I don't want to report them because I'm afraid that, you know, I know what that's like to be discriminated. I know they're going through a lot. We make excuses sometimes, even in the workplace, right, with people who we respect, because maybe they're people who are supervising us to get our license, or they're the people who can give us the promotion or make the recommendations for us to advance, and we don't want to see them get hurt because we don't want to get hurt. So we make excuses for inappropriate behavior, even at the workplace. Maybe it's not in our relationships at family, but we make excuses for people who we want to support. But then here's the phone incomings, right? The phone comes in as I've got to forgive you. I've got to apologize. I've got to allow you to publicly embarrass me or to bully me in the workplace or bully me at home so that you won't release me. So you won't either fire me at work or you won't release me from this organization or you won't abandon me romantically or abandon me family wise in terms of being maybe you won't be my brother, you won't be there as my sister, you won't be there as my mom. So I learned how to people please. But one of the things that's a key ingredient of all those things is that in order to be there, there had to be no sense of self, no self-love, no self-care. That you have to not matter. The relationship has to matter. You have to not matter. The future of you has to matter more than you matter. But one of the things I want to say during this month of love is that you do matter. And the ultimate gift to you is know that you deserve more than what you give. That people pleasing doesn't stop the cycle of being harmed. It continues it because there's always that honeymoon period, right? Where things are going great. And then there's that tension period where things aren't so going great. And then there's that period where you're going to get hurt. And because you can't fight them, you can't run from it, you can't play dead, this people pleasing comes, but it doesn't stop it, it just delays it. And you really deserve to be honored and treated as if you have value in the workplace, at home, in your friendships, and in all your endeavors. You do matter. So today I want you to really think about how you can honor you, even in your relationship, because some relationships are here for a reason and here for a season. And some relationships are historical and hysterical. And if you're having a historical relationship, this feels familiar. This pain feels familiar. This fear of abandonment feels familiar. And I'm going to challenge you to do something that's uncomfortable, that doesn't feel familiar. I'm going to challenge you to choose you. I'm going to challenge you to love on you. I'm going to challenge you to treat you the way you want someone to treat the person that you love the most, whether it's a child, I don't care if it's a dog, a goldfish. Treat you the way you would want someone that you love the most to be treated. Look beyond your fear. Look at your courage. Really give yourself permission to recognize that you are a child of the highest power. You're a child of the universe. You're a child of God. You're a child of Allah. You're a child of Jehovah. And more importantly, you were born with a purpose. So live within your purpose. Take care of you more than you take care of your fears. Like and share this video with someone who may need to hear these words. And if I resonate with you and you're in Maryland, D.C., and you're looking for clinicians, visit me. Let's do a 15-minute consultation at CandiceRDickens.com. Check out the rest of my videos on YouTube channel, Dope Black Therapist. But when I say that I see you And you deserve so much better than what you are getting. You're destined for greatness. So live in your greatness. Take care.